All right, g'day IB Psychology students. In this video, we're going to look at the analysis section of the internal assessment. I'm going to explain 5 big mistakes that students make so you know to avoid them, and I'm going to give you some tips along the way. Right, so let's have a look at the top 5 mistakes in the analysis section of the IB Psychology IA. You want to make sure you avoid making these mistakes. Coming in number 5 is students putting raw data in the body of their report. All your raw data and your raw data tables should all go in the appendices, right? Your calculations go in the appendix as well. Now, by the time, this isn't that common of a problem in the final draft. So when I'm moderating IAs, I don't see that all this often. I do see it a lot in my first draft of my students' report. So if you're submitting your first draft, also make sure that you do not put any raw data in the body of the report. Okay, yeah, and so I would suggest having a raw data table that you use to collect all your data and put that in the appendices. Okay, now number 4. The wrong level of measurement is identified. So there are 4 levels of measurement: ratio, interval, ordinal, nominal. I'm not going to go into detail explaining what these mean right now. But sometimes if a student says it's ratio, I've read, chief examiner comments to the extent of, the wrong level of measurement is identified. Now, to be safe, I would say that just state your results as being at least ordinal. The reason why the level of measurement is important is because it determines what inferential statistical test we can use. If we have nominal data, we use a chi-squared typically. If it's at least ordinal, we use a Mann-Whitney U or a Wilcoxon, we can, depending on our design, independent samples or repeated measures. Now, it only has to be at least ordinal to justify or to justify a Mann-Whitney U or a Wilcoxon. So you don't have to distinguish between ordinal, interval, and ratio. And I wouldn't, because if you do say it's ratio and you get it wrong, you run the risk of being marked down for no particular reason. So just be safe and say it's at least ordinal. Unless, of course, you gathered nominal data, right? So then in which case it's different. So nominal data, just to distinguish these two. Nominal data means categories. Yes, no, black, white, favorite color. Loftus and Palmer's car crash study, if you said, did you see broken glass? Yes, no. That is nominal data. We can categorize it, but we can't order it. We can't rank it. If you're doing Loftus and Palmer with the speed estimates, that would be ordinal because we can rank them based on how fast they were. Now, again, there's some controversy and there's a lot of debate about, for example, Loftus and Palmer, is that ratio, interval, or ordinal? I would argue it doesn't matter. It's at least ordinal, and that's what you're trying to argue, right? Again, if you're doing the speed estimate. So make sure you get the right level of measurement, and to play it safe, you can just say, sorry, that says unless you got ordinal data. Sorry, I should have said unless you got nominal data. I made a mistake there, my bad. So just play it safe, say at least ordinal data. Number 3 mistake is multiple descriptive statistics being applied. Now, this isn't necessarily marked down. It doesn't say anywhere in the new rubric that you should use only one, but I would recommend using only one anyway. So you use your mean, median, or mode. Now, my advice would be to also put your results in a paragraph summary and include them in a table. Again, it's not required, but it kind of is expected, and it is just best practice as well. So you write you put your numerical results in a table, nice clear table so we can see the comparison, and then you also write a summary, right, of what happened. Okay, so just a couple things with descriptive statistics as well. Typically speaking, you can use the mean unless you have outliers, in which case you might go with the median. You don't have to explain what descriptive statistic you used. That used to be in the old curriculum, but not in the new one. Okay, now number 2 is misleading graphs. This is such a common problem, and I get it, right? You want to exaggerate the effect of your study. You want to show, hey, look, we've got a big effect here. What I see a lot in students' IAs are graphs like this over here in the corner. A big difference. Wow, look at this. But when we actually look at the graph down the side, and we look at here, we can see that they've distorted the graph. And this is just a classic old example, not from an IA, but just trying to exaggerate the difference here. And most students try to do this when they're creating their graphs. They really want to show a difference, and so they manipulate them. And it's inaccurate, but in actual fact, it plagues psychology. I can't watch a TED talk without seeing a graph like this that's distorting the effect. Now, this is one I've copied from my example IA that I have in the IA Teacher Support Pack, and you can see it doesn't really look that impressive because it's not. It's not that much of an impressive difference, 1.7 versus 0.27. Now, how did I decide what values to have down the side? These are the this is the maximum value, like the highest value that I had in my graph. So that there accurately represents the possible range that I could have received. And then this is, we can see again the comparison between the groups isn't that big. I could have definitely expanded here and exaggerated this difference like most students do in their IAs, but that would be a misleading graph. So make sure you get your graphs accurate. Right, and the Yep, don't exaggerate the effect. The number one mistake I see in the analysis section is the inferential statistics not summarized properly, right? They're being poorly applied. Now, inferential statistics are very, very tricky. It's very tough, and it's very tough to write about them properly. In my textbook, I've written for each chi-squared, Mann-Whitney, Wilcoxon, how to write about them properly, what information you need to include. I've got other videos on the blog. I've got how to do the Mann-Whitney test using the calculator and how to write about it. But let me quickly just say, this is what you need to make sure you include. Begin by saying what test you used and why. Now, the why is based on the level of data and the design, independent samples or repeated measures. Is your data related or unrelated? Also include the calculated value. So for the Mann-Whitney U test, that's the U value. For the Wilcoxon test, that's the W value. Include the critical value. Now, to understand what the critical value is, you're going to need to use a critical values table. Again, watch the Mann-Whitney U test for a video to explain that. Also, you can read. I've also got a whole nother video on the on inferential statistics. Okay, so you want to watch that. The p-value, right? So we set the value of probability at 0.05 in social sciences, but you'll have a calculated p-value, and you want to include that as well if it is part of the calculator that you're using. And then you finish by, based on all of these things and how they're related to each other and how the critical value relates to the calculated value, you're going to reject or retain your null hypothesis, and you need to do that correctly. So a correct summary of the inferential statistics will have all of these four things written correctly, clearly, and summarized properly. Now, I'm not going to show you how I did it on my example IA, because simply I want you to figure out how these are going to relate themselves. Now, I know you might not be happy with that, but tough bickies. I know if I copied and pasted and put my example here, then all the students would just read that and they would just insert their values into my writing, and that's not what I want to do. That would defeat the purpose of trying to help you understand inferential statistics. Sorry, just a bit of tough love here. Okay, so that is the 5 top mistakes in the analysis section. So here's my best advice to summarize it. Remember the purpose of your experiment. The purpose of your experiment is to try to test an effect and to see if it exists. So your results, your analysis section, which is your results section, you want to show, was there an effect? How big was the effect? Okay, and so you have to report clearly. So the summary of your results in the paragraph form and the table form needs to clearly show, was there an effect there and how big was that effect? And also don't forget to report honestly. So just be clear and honest. Don't try to exaggerate the effect. And you'll feel this, right? When you do your IA and your result fails, so for example, you didn't get the results you were expecting, you might feel a little bit bummed out by it. And a lot of people do. They're like, oh man, our experiment failed. And there you can see the tendency for researcher bias. We want to have our hypotheses approved, and we have to fight against that when we do the research process. This is one of the reasons why the IA is a really good addition to the IB Psych course, because you get that first-hand experience of what it's like to be a researcher. So my best advice, just remember, think about it holistically, right, to explain the results clearly and honestly, and also refer back to the IA. So you have to have your descriptive and inferential statistics applied accurately. The graph is presented and addresses a hypothesis. Do not graph your raw data. That's another common mistake I see. You are graphing your calculated data, so you're graphing your descriptive statistics, and you have to interpret your statistical findings with regard to the hypothesis. Now, your descriptive statistics are not linked to the hypothesis. This is referring to your inferential statistics. Do you retain or reject your null hypothesis based on your inferential test? Okay, and another checklist here. Sorry, my little video here is cutting off some of the values. Let's see if I can move my little man over there. Okay, right, so here is the checklist of the descriptive statistics, the graph, and the inferential statistics. Now, do not forget to put your inferential statistics calculation, a screenshot, or if you've done it by hand, put that in the appendices. You'll only get a maximum of 3 out of 6 for this section if you do not put the inferential statistics in your appendix, okay? Because we have to check your calculations. All right. So that's it. That is that's how to do well in the analysis section. Don't make any of those mistakes. Follow the rubric, follow that checklist, and you'll do great. So subscribe to the channel, the blog. You've heard all this before. If you've made it to the end of this video, well done. Most people don't make it this far. That's the IA Teacher Support Pack. I'll put a link in the description. And thank you and good luck.